Hello, hello, hello everyone. Welcome back to Through the Pages with Dee. It is Friday. Let's do something a little bit different. So guys, as the title says, my top 10 authors I now have to buy. So what I did with this is I wrote down all the authors that I have read basically and enjoyed, and who I potentially have read a series of, or I have read one book and gone on to read another works by the same author. And I decided I think I'm well enough in now from sometime last year, but potentially starting my fantasy journey in January, that there may be some authors where I can potentially do a top 10 rating. So I'm going to give it a go. And the reason why I've called it I Now Have to Buy is on the principle of I've read their works, and now if I see their name, I have to buy it. So we'll start at number 10. Number 10 comes in with Susanna Clarke. This is quite a recent read for me. I recently read her Piranesi and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 hat ratings, and the storyline is very much based upon what is a kind of sci-fi mystery. We have the character who is Piranesi, but there is elements of DID, dissociative identity disorder, within that character. Not to give too much away, because obviously I don't really like to do spoilers, even though I have just recently spoiled the entirety of Memories of Ice and House of Chains. So if you haven't read those books, don't watch those videos till you have. Just a sideline. But yes, Susanna Clarke has great prose. She's got very imaginative skills. She likes to envelop you in the surroundings that are beautiful and kind of austere, kind of pillars and stairways and hallways in Piranesi, and very kind of Greek in its feel. And I really, really enjoyed that book. So I want to go on, and one of the books I want to go on to read, which has been recommended to me in the comments, but I wanted to go on and read it anyway, purely because of my buddy Britain, who has raved about it, and Darko, who has also raved about it, my bestie, which is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. So look out for that one coming on the channel, because I will be picking that up soon and I will be reading it hopefully this year. So that's number 10. At number 9, I have got down Octavia E. Butler. The story behind this book is very emotional, very heartfelt, very controversial in a way, with things that still are an issue within these current times that really shouldn't be an issue anymore with regards to race. And the reason why I picked up Octavia E. Butler's book was because of my bestie, Darko. Darko reviewed this book on his channel, Kindles and Kicks. Make sure you go and sub. Make sure you go and subscribe to Britain, some okie dude. And Darko's review of this book was so inspiring that he made me want to read that book. And it's through that book that me and Darko formed the friendship that we have. And we call each other bestie because he is literally somebody who I must have known in a former life, which very much relates to the subcontext of Kindred. That is kind of the storyline of Kindred, which is there is this lady called Dana who travels back in her own family's time to meet distant relatives and actually come to the realization that she isn't just solely from black heritage. There is white slavery owning kind of heritage in her family, and she has to be involved in this time scale to make sure that things happen in a certain way for her existence. And not just that, she also is fighting her own morals from the time that she's from to the time that she goes back to. It's an extremely, extremely thought-provoking book, and thank you so much to Darko for bringing that book to my attention, because it is an absolute favourite of mine. So off the back of that, I need more Octavia E. Butler in my life. So that is another author that I'm going to continue to read. I now have to buy more. Number 8, Thanks for this one need to be given to the beautiful, kind-hearted, gorgeous Eva from She Was Only Eva. Make sure you subscribe. She has on so many different channels, in the chats, on a live discussion, raved about Simon Jimenez. So again, my attention was piqued. My curiosity was piqued. So I had to seek out what this book was that Evie kept talking about, which is The Spear Cuts Through Water. I read this book and I was blown away. Now, you may wonder why it's only at number 8 when it is such a favourite of mine in the books for 2024. The reason being, I have only read Spear Cuts Through Water. I haven't got to any other of his works as yet. So, because I've only read one of these particular authors' works, such as Susanna Clarke, Octavia E. Butler, Simon Jimenez, and the next one, because I've only read one of their works, that's why they're where they are. But don't let that perturb you to think that they are not up there. They are up there. So Simon Jimenez is at number 8 with The Spear Cuts Through Water. The Vanished Birds is something I will definitely be getting to. I know he's only at the moment got those 2 works, but as and when he does release any more work, you can absolutely guarantee I will be jumping on those as soon as I can. So Simon Jimenez is at number 8. Number 7 is thanks to a few different people. So it's thanks to John at Talking Story. It's thanks to Chaz at Bookish Chaz. It's thanks to Darko. It's thanks to Britain. They have all mentioned this particular author. And again, I've only read one of his works. I do have one sat here waiting for me to read it, which I'm hopefully going to get to this year. But this particular book absolutely blew my mind. The context and the narrative and the way that this particular author went with this book was so unique and so, not only, and I use this word a lot, but I do think it relates to a lot of different authors in the way that they're not just with a kind of eccentric edge to it. It was so imaginative as to how you can take actual relative things from history that are gods or things that have been worshipped and tweak them into something kind of unique and make them slightly different. This is Neil Gaiman's American Gods. I have never seen the series. I may at some point try and dig that out and find it and watch it, just to relate to how it plays against the book. But the book for me was amazing. And every single one of those booktubers are correct when they say Neil Gaiman is such a talent. Obviously, you know, he goes into comics as well. He's done some Batman comic material. He is so awesome in his writings that he is absolutely an author I need to buy more of. I actually have Fragile Things sat right here waiting for me to read it. There is actually an offer on Amazon where I can buy the whole works, which I am contemplating, which I probably will end up buying because the price is very, very reasonable. So I definitely will revisit Neil Gaiman. I definitely now have to buy more Neil Gaiman. And so he's at 7. Number 6, I've chosen Robin Hobb. Robin Hobb was brought to my attention by Mike, at Mike's Book Reviews. He's kind of one of the first booktubers I ever started watching. And I remember one of the videos I started watching was him talking about Robin Hobb and the Farseer trilogy. So, out of curiosity, I ordered the trilogy of the Farseer trilogy and began to read it. And I struggled a little bit at first with the vocabulary, the written word, because she's so eloquent in her prose that I wasn't used to that style of writing. That's not the material I'd been reading. And please don't hate me, people, because I think if you do like this author, then you like this author. But I started and got into James Patterson quite heavily, and I make no apologies for liking James Patterson. He's a great author. He writes very easy to read material, but that was the kind of level of writing that where I was. So to go from that to Robin Hobb was quite a jump, because she is very austere in her vocabulary, what she uses. So it took me a little minute to adjust to soak in that prose and that ambience that she was creating. But once I'd got there, I was totally consumed with Fitz and the gang, and what an amazing story. So I then, as I am saying, I now have to buy. I went on to buy the second trilogy of Live Ship. So I have that in my library upstairs to read. I was going to do it this month, but Brandon Sanderson's books, Mistborn, kept giving me dirty looks because I haven't touched them since I bought them. So I felt really bad. So I decided to go with them instead this month. But I will get to Live Ship. I absolutely will. Maybe July, maybe August, but I definitely will get there. So Robin Hobb is at number 6. Number 5, and you, again, on this one, you may say to me, why on earth, with all what you've just done, Dee, is that there? Why is it not higher? I have my reasons, and a lot of my reasons are the emotional impact that an author will have on me. So that's not to say that any of these authors haven't had that. They have. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in this top 10. It's taken that kind of impact for these to be in my top 10. I've reeled off a lot of authors that haven't made it here. I have some that are going to get an honourable mention. But for the book and the author to make it into my top 10, it had to impact me in a way where even now, months and months on from reading it, I can still so clearly remember the story and the characters and the effect it's had on me. And yes, I have only just literally finished book 4 of this series of 10, hint, hint. But there are others who potentially have had that instantaneous impact on me who I have put higher. So, but it doesn't mean to say that they are that much higher. It's just that in the reality to me, and this is just my top 10, this was the way it had to go because of how they've impacted me on a first time read and how they're going to make me feel going forward reading them. So at number 5, it's Stephen Erikson and his Malazan series. I have had an up and down with this series. I started off on a high with Gardens of the Moon, then I went to Dead House Gates and I kind of slumped a little bit because I don't do battle scenes very well, and that's in any book. But Stephen Erikson in Dead House Gates went for it with the battle scene. I think we were talking 20-30 pages of purely just battle, and I lost my concentration. I lost my ability to take in what was being put down, and half of that didn't go in. The important parts went in, but I'd like to think the important parts went in. But as I went on to read Memories of Ice and House of Chains, I kind of realised talking to other people just how much I'd missed from Dead House Gates, because I just didn't have the capability to take in that narrative. It was just too complex and complicated for me. So I missed some bits of Dead House Gates, but Memories of Ice is definitely on a level with Gardens of the Moon. Gardens of the Moon was that first impact that, wow, this is epic fantasy. This is something else. And then I didn't think anything else within the series was going to be able to impact me in the same way. But Memories of Ice certainly did. And it's literally a slither beneath Gardens of the Moon for me, a slither. That may change as we go on in time, but for now it's just that smidgen under Gardens of the Moon because it didn't have that initial impact. It certainly wrapped up and certainly gave me a warmth from the initial book to that book because it continued with the same characters, so it kind of wrapped up the story in a way for me. I have said in my video that Memories of Ice could have quite easily have just stopped there and it could have just been that trilogy, and that would have been plenty. I would have been okay with that. But the story continues. Obviously, we're going to meet new characters in the future, and we're going to stick with some old characters, I hope. But the thing is, I took my time way more with Memories of Ice. I did it in vlogging style, and if you haven't, as I say, they are spoilery. But if you have read Malazan and you haven't checked those videos out, please check them out. I vlogged every single day, barring the weekends, and I put myself and my daughter, we put a lot of hours into that. So if you would give that a watch, I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, I enjoyed the time, and I enjoyed the comments that came from it, and I enjoyed the inclusion and the involvement of Malazan fans, and it was just a real experience to spend just May on those 2 books. I really did think I was going to get further, I really kind of deluded myself thinking, I'll get these next 4 read that I've bought. I just didn't, because I literally consumed myself in the detectiveness of Malazan. Every single word, every single clue I was looking for, because that is what Malazan is. It's like hidden mysteries. So I was spending a lot of time trying to work out, does this relate to this? What does this mean? So it took me a lot longer, and I have a fundamental amount of notes. I went through an A4 pad, and then I went through another A4 pad. There is a lot. I need a file, just a file for the notes for those 2 books, because there are so many. But I took it quite seriously. Not to say I didn't enjoy it, I did, but I did take it kind of as a job for that month solidly of Malazan. So the epicness of Malazan is at number 5, but believe me, it is a series that I will continue with. Whether I'll get into the novellas or not, I don't know, but it is just a fantastically epic series, and you do fall in love with the characters, and you do fall in love with the environment, and it's such a great story. So that's at number 5. At number 4 of authors I now have to buy is an old faithful, Stephen King. I was reading Stephen King at a very young age. I probably shouldn't have been, but my childhood was one of something a bit different. I was introduced to horror at a very young age, as I said on Talking Story Wednesday night. And yeah, I found Carrie and It first. Now, I do have quite a few Stephen Kings, but what I will continue to do, and now I have to buy more Stephen Kings. I wouldn't necessarily say I need the whole collection of Stephen King novels and novellas, but he is up there for me, because the impact that It alone has had on me as a story, not just in book form, but also the adaptations that have been made of that story, when you think about it, yes, it is a coming of age story, but there's quite a deeper element to it than that, about friendship and about loyalty and about this long-standing promise to be there for each other with these circumstances. And yes, these circumstances are outlandish, and who in this world would ever come across this killer clown? But the killer clown could be metaphorical for something else. The killer clown could be metaphorical for that, as much as it pains me to say it, that predator that's in your life, and you need that circle of friends to support you in that struggle against that predator. So I do feel like it has more to it than just a killer clown coming after kids every so many years. There's more to it than that, and if you give it a deeper insight, it hits kind of harder. So I do have to buy more Stephen King. Then at number 3, which was one of my earlier reads, I think again that was Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. I found a book called Kings of the Wild by the author Nicholas Ames. Didn't know this book was going to be quite what it is. I was under the impression of it being obviously referring to 70s and somewhat 80s rock bands. Obviously that piqued my interest. I am very much a child of 70s, 80s music. That's where my heart lies predominantly, is with 80s music of all genres. But, and might I say, in my humble opinion, I don't think there will ever be an era like that again, music-wise. But Nicholas Ames's book hits on so many different levels. Not only is it heartfelt, not only is it comedy, it's that camaraderie, it's that friendship, it's that group, it's this band of brothers who have fought a good majority of their lives together and have constantly had each other's backs. And when a crisis hits, this one particular character knows that he can go to the group of friends and get the backup that he needs. And this is exactly what happens. And yes, they argue, and yes, they fall out, and yes, they have differences of opinion. But that doesn't mean to say that they will ever not be the group that they are. They will forever be this group of this band of warriors, and will always have each other's back. And when a book makes you physically laugh out loud, when a book physically makes you cry, that has everything in it to me. That's everything I'm looking for. It has scenes that are quite gruesome in their extent as to the fighting, but it also has moments of such heartfelt love, and it's just such an amazing book. And if you haven't read it, you really do need to. Granted, any of these books that I say may well not be your cup of tea, but at least if you give them a try, you can make that judgment for yourselves. So as far as authors I now have to buy, Nicholas Ames is most definitely at number 3, because that book will forever be an adored book to me. It's one I absolutely will go back to reread. At number 2, this was one of my very first journeys into fantasy. It's a series, and I heard a lot of people talking about it. It was being very much talked about at the time all over BookTube. And at this point, I was just a watcher. I hadn't even come on and done a video yet. And I decided that I needed to give this series a go. So a lot of booktubers were talking about this series, and again, my curiosity is piqued. So I sought out the John Gwynne books and started off with Malice and Valor. Just got the 2 to start with, because I thought, if I don't like it, I'm not buying the entire series. I'm not having all these books for no point. But it was getting raved about on BookTube, and I thought, I probably am going to like it, but just in case I don't, let's not, splash money out that we don't have. And I read Malice, and yes, it was slightly slow paced to start with, but it is just introducing your T character lineup. So there is every reason for it to be kind of slow paced. And then we get to, I think it's Valor. I think that is the next one. But we get to the second book of the series, and the pace picks up, and the characters and the storylines pick up, and we get more intimate with the characters, and everything that's going on is coming to a climax. And then we get to Ruin, which is the third book in the series. That is my absolute favourite of the 4 that are The Faithful and the Fallen. It is just one of the most epic tales of fantasy. I'm not that well versed in fantasy like some other booktubers. I have only started reading fantasy since January. So I do have kind of a limited knowledge, and I am learning as I go. But at this point, with all what I've read, and I think so far this year I've read something like maybe 30, 40 books, something like that. I found this third element of this series to be just on an epic scale. It was so good. The characters are so amazing. It draws you in so much, and you are so excited by what is happening. You can't help but just want the best for everyone. And you're so behind Corbin as a character, who is kind of the lead role, and he's kind of the chosen one. And it's his kind of quest you're following. But it's just such an epic, epic fantasy that I loved every second of it. So John Gwynne is my number 2 spot of an author I now have to buy. Now, my number 1 spot, who could that be? So I've mentioned some great authors, I think. It's looking at the lineup, it's, I suppose, you're wondering, who on earth could she put at number 1? Or maybe you're not. Maybe you are. But this is an author who, from the very first book I read, and it was only a novella, the impact that his writing style and his comedy, and in just such a small amount of pages, the story that he delivered and the context of this kind of good versus evil in a way, but not quite good, with quite kind of a twist on there, just blew me away, and I was just in love instantly with this author. So that is KJ Parker. KJ Parker has taken the number 1 spot because of that instant impact this author has had on me. And then I was sent again by the gorgeous Eva, Pulling the Wings Off of Angels. The first book was part of what is fan-based known as a Salininus trilogy. And I read the book, The Devil You Know. Now, this is believed to be, by the fans, the second in the series. There is Blue and Gold, The Devil You Know, and The Big Score. I read the second one, but I was informed by the very well informed Alan of the Library of Alexandria, that you don't really have to read it in that kind of order. It's just a fan-based trilogy. They've not been written for you to read them like that, purely because they all contain the same character or are based around the same character, Saturninus. They have been created by the fans as the Saturninus trilogy. However, I am going to go back and get Blue and Gold, and I'm also going to get The Big Score and read them again, including The Devil You Know in the middle, so that I do that as a fan, because I am now a fan. But Pulling the Wings Off Angels, which Evie got me, again has the same kind of context to it. It's that same humour, it's that same kind of sarcasm, that same banter, taking kind of serious elements of religion, and I wouldn't say necessarily making fun of it, I wouldn't put it in that context, but bringing humour to it. And the same with 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City. Same kind of prose, same kind of writing style, kind of humorous. And I just love the way he writes. I love the way KJ Parker does his prose. There is so much humour in there, and it's so light-hearted, even though you're not talking necessarily about light-hearted subjects. He just brings this fantastic element of humour to his writing, and it suits my style. It suits me. It's very much what I like to read. Yes, I like my mystery. Yes, I like horror. But when we're talking about horror, I need horror to be horror, which is my interpretation of horror. So I like it very dark, very grim. I'm yet to find something that hits the right notes. Although I do have a book that has kind of touched on that, which I am going to review sometime in the future, which I read last year, so I didn't have the channel then. But yeah, KJ Parker, his style of writing just suits what it is I'm looking to read. And he is a great but very, very entertaining palette cleanser between books, especially these novella type styles that he writes. They are not much more than 200 pages, if that, so that I can get through them within 6 hours. And because the way he writes it, it's not a book to be put down. It's a book to be finished, or a novella, I should say, to be finished. Because it draws you into the story. You're just there, you're in it, and you're just flicking pages, because the pace in which he writes it suits the pace in which I read, and you're not missing details. You're going through with every character. And I just get such enthusiasm from when I'm reading KJ Parker. I'm consumed in the world. I can see the characters. I'm fully involved. So that's why KJ Parker has to be my number one. Because yes, a lot of these authors have had that impact on me. Very much emotional, very hit me where it hurts, and or made me laugh and smile so much. But there's just that something special that only I can kind of interpret when I read KJ Parker, to what his prose does to me, as to why he's at my number one. If I could put it into words for you, I would try. But it's kind of the euphoria that most women get when they need that piece of chocolate. That's the kind of way I have to describe it. That's the way KJ Parker books make me feel. I'm so enraptured and enjoyment when I'm reading a KJ Parker book, and just the way that his writing style is, that I'm lost. I'm completely lost in it. And yes, they don't last long enough, because the ones I've read are just a novella. There's not enough to it. But with the 16 Ways, it is a novel, and it's exactly the same. It's not dipped, it's not strayed. It's exactly the same style, with exactly the same humour, the banter, the witty, the sarcasm. And I just love that. I absolutely adore that sense of humour. So that's my top 10, guys. I hope you find them agreeable. If you don't, let me know in the comments what your top 10 would have been. The honourable mentions I have to make, which didn't quite make the 10, but they do need to be said because they have made an impact on me, is T. Kingfisher. She's a great novelist, and her books that I've read, along with John and Britain, we didn't necessarily read them as a buddy read. John and Britain were. I kind of just jumped in there on the bandwagon because that's what I do. I'm just a cheeky little, can I nudge my way in? No, Britain found out I was reading it, as did John, and they just sort of had this conversation. Should we involve Dee? So they did, and we had a great conversation. And John being John, he always kind of just has this unique way of making you see a book. And you go, oh, do you know what? Maybe I think you've just changed my opinion of how I was seeing it. You've just added something to that for me. So yeah, I see it differently now. And he's not being forceful with that. He's just saying, this is how I saw it, and it did this and it did that. And he's so eloquent in the way he does it, and so theatrical with his wording, that he does sell a book to you. He really does. He's the most, not to discredit anybody else, but he's the most skilled booktuber I've seen that does that. He will make you buy. He'd make you buy the dictionary, even though you know how to spell. He's that good with the silver tongue that, yeah, he'd convince you to buy the dictionary, even though you know how to spell. That's who John Minton is. And Britain was just, just as excited about T. Kingfisher. And yeah, I loved her style. I loved her poetic way in writing horror. It was very, very beautiful. The other, again, very recent, did the review on Wednesday, Philip K. Dick. I really enjoyed Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So he is, again, another author who I now have to buy, along with T. Kingfisher. And finally, an honourable mention to Marcus Zusak, who wrote The Book Thief. That too is a fantastic book. It's the only one I've read of his works, so I will be investigating, has Marcus got any more works out there? And if he has, I'm very keen to know what they are too. So that's my top 10, guys. As I say, let me know your top 10 in the comments. If there's anything you agree with, anything you disagree with, put it in the comments. I read all the comments. I reply as quick as I can, but I certainly do reply to everybody, because that matters. It's the involvement with the community, and the comments matter to me. So yep, put it in the comments. If you can like this video, that helps a great deal. Like it if you liked it. There's no force in there. Like it if you liked it. If you've been a couple of times and you haven't subscribed yet, just click that button. You only need to do it the once. YouTube may at some point kick you off, because they do have a tendency to do that. If they do, just go there and do it again. Press the bell, and then you'll be notified of any uploads that I make, any new videos. And other than that, it's Friday. Enjoy your weekends. I hope you're up to something nice. I hope the weather's gorgeous for you wherever you are. And I will see you all next Monday, on Monday now. So have a great weekend, and I'll see you through the pages. Bye-bye.